This is a culture center of a Russian community of Tallinn. Demographics of Estonia. In Estonia there are 1.3 million people, and more than 60% of them are ethnic Estonians, and 25% are Russians, and the rest are divided between small minorities. So the Russian minority has long roots here and has their cultural life and a little bit segregated social life, and there are tensions between the Estonians and Russians, and there are political tensions between the countries. Russia borders Estonia on the east, but together with that there are cultural centers, there are schools in Russian language, there are concerts, there is a TV channel in Russian language, and so on and so forth. So not everything is black and white. There are colors and relations between Estonians and Russians, including the culture center. Tallinn city was established in early 13th century, and very soon the city authorities prohibited the construction of wooden houses in the area of the old city. Here you can see old wooden house which was constructed about 200 years ago, and we can see it here because first of all this is outside the city walls. These houses, they are bordering the city wall, which means the city wall is the back wall of these houses. But actually I think this is the only wooden structure in the old city of Tallinn which I can find for you. So we are standing at the Viru Street, which is one of the entrances or exits from Tallinn, and you can see the remnants of the city gate, which has a name of the town. It leads to Viru town, Viru Gate. Everything on this street is by the name of Viru. Viru Hotel, Viru Restaurant, Viru Gate, and so on and so forth. Tallinn was a very important stronghold in the medieval ages. It had a very impressive defensive fortification system consisting of a very long wall with more than 40 defensive towers, a lot of moats, and the second wall and the second row of moats, and so on and so forth. So nobody conquered Tallinn by force, but it was conquered by a siege. So in contrast to the military history, we have a flower market here which is open 24/7, so you can buy flowers even during the night hours. We continue walking on Viru Street of Tallinn, and this street was very commercial, one of the most commercial streets in the city, and this also is connected and related to the Jewish history of Tallinn. Jewish community in Estonia developed relatively late, in the 19th century, but when they settled outside the city walls and they were allowed to have their shops in the city, they liked the Viru Street, and step by step they opened 29 shops on this relatively short, a few hundred meters street. And in the local folklore, the local people called this street a Jewish street because of the variety of Jewish-owned shops. So we continue our walks in Tallinn, and we are on a little square or junction of few narrow streets, the Russian Street, the Viru Street, and some others. And here on this street we can see few restaurants, and these restaurants, they have interesting names, and these names tell us a little bit of history of city of Tallinn. For example, here you can see the restaurant by the name of Olde Hansa. Tallinn belonged to Hanseatic League, which was a commercial union in the early medieval period in Estonia in the late 13th century and existed for a few hundred years. It was a German union of cities, of port cities, which had commercial agreements. So Tallinn had a big advantage of being part of Hanseatic League. It developed commerce, trades, import, export, and so on. Another interesting restaurant is Pepper Sack, and you can see here the red sack of pepper as an ad for the restaurant. And so Pepper Sack, why is such a name? People who sold salt in the medieval period in Tallinn, they were rich. People who sold pepper, they were super rich. So the nickname for those who were super rich was a pepper sack, meaning somebody who has the whole sack of pepper to sell. The yellow building is the Great Guild. The economic system of medieval Estonia, as well as other parts of Europe, was professional. So there were organizations, guilds of merchants. The Great Guild was of merchants. Smaller guilds were of craftsmen, and this was the basis of the economic, commercial life of the city. Now, this narrow passage was connecting the Great Guild with the town hall. And the wealthy merchants from the Great Guild, they were taking a shortcut to get to the town hall for the negotiations and so on. Now, this little house, number 4, it's called the smallest house in Tallinn. It was this place was not occupied. All other places on this narrow street were occupied, and the people who owned shops here were actually members of the city hall, town hall, and they made their profits from selling to the rich people from the Great Guild who were coming here. Now, one of them wanted to show others that he is smarter, and by hiring a third-party person, he purchased the plot and built a small house, and he was the first person to sell liquor here. So after a short period of time, his secret activity became known to other members of the town hall, and they fired him and took over the liquor house and started selling liquor on their own. So this is one of the stories of Tallinn, and today it's still the smallest house in the old town. It's the house of one room and one little space in the attic. And we are reaching the town hall square. On the town hall square, we see numerous interesting buildings. The pharmacy from 1422 is in this house, and a lot of older houses with the triangular facades, and the newer houses with a relatively flat roof. And in the center of the big square, actually not in the very center, but on the side of the big square, we can see the old Tallinn town hall. So it looks like a church, but it was never a church. It always was a town hall, although it has a spire. And the special thing about this town hall is that it is still in its original shape from 1402. It was few times damaged during wars and fires, but the citizens took care to rebuild it in its original shape. So this is a big square where local markets take place. Today these are souvenir markets, and celebrations. They also put a Christmas tree for the New Year celebrations and so on. So this is the very heart of Estonian capital, Tallinn. Alexandr Nevski Cathedral was built in the end of the 19th century as an attempt of Russians to make Russian Orthodoxy into a dominant religion in Estlandia, which actually failed. They tried quite hard, but this religion never became the religion of local people, and the resistance of Estonians against Russian rule was always very strong. But the cathedral remained in its place, and today it's one of the most important highlights of the upper city of Tallinn. Tallinn Cathedral. Estonia was one of the last pagan states in Europe. It was baptized by Danish knights who came and conquered these territories and baptized, Christianized local population. So for 300 years, from early 1200s till early 1500s, Estonia was Catholic, and later on Reformation was strong here, and the ideas of Martin Luther were deeply implemented, and the cathedral we have just seen became a Protestant church, and it still is a Protestant church. At the same time, it is important to emphasize that Estonians are proud that they are least religious country in Europe. At least that's what they state. I'm not sure if it's really so that they are least religious country in Europe, but for sure they are least religious country in the Baltic States. Out of the 1.3 million people of citizens of Estonia, only 300,000 affiliated themselves with a religion. 150,000 Russian Orthodox and 150,000 Protestant. And there is also a very small congregation of Catholic people, and the rest are unaffiliated. This is one of the most beautiful panoramic platform in Tallinn, where from the upper city we can see the lower city, we can see the spire of the tallest church in Estonia, the Olde church, and the defensive towers, and the Bay of Harbor and the Bay of Tallinn. I will tell you the story about the two ladies. So we are heading to the narrowest street in the city, which was called by local people the Blood Street, because many duels which were prohibited took place on the back street of the upper city, and of course a lot of blood was spilled here. But not only blood and not only hard stories, terrible stories happened here, but also some funny things. So the story of two ladies with the big crinolina skirts, each one was coming from opposite direction, and they met here at the narrowest point of the street, which is like less than 2 meters, and with the big skirts they couldn't pass. So they tried this way and that way, and they can't pass. And the man who looked at them from this window, he told them, "I can solve your problem in 1 second." "How would you do that?" asked the ladies. And the man told them, "Look, the younger lady should give the way to the older lady." So when they heard this, each one ran opposite direction, because each lady is the youngest, is the nicest and the most beautiful, and would never admit that she is older than the other one. Hello, we are having our second day in Tallinn, and we started from the synagogue. So the synagogue in Tallinn was built in 2007. It's the newest and the only new built synagogue in the Baltic States. As you could see, the architecture is modern, and it's a real miracle, as Chabad rabbi Shmuel Kot succeeded to collect enough funds to build a new synagogue. When he arrived in Tallinn, there was no synagogue at all. They used to pray in a little room in the community building, and he had the dream, and he was blessed to fulfill his dream and to build this modern synagogue, which is also a community center for his congregation, and also place of worship and place of celebrations and place of studies and everything. Now this building is a Jewish community center of Estonia, and this building is a Jewish school. According to the law of national minorities, each national minority has a right for cultural life, and a school education is part of the cultural life. So this is a state Jewish school of Estonia with about 350 students studying in it, and so it's a relatively small school, considered a high quality education. So this is a complex of a Jewish life in Tallinn, Estonia. Field of the songs. So this huge area with a big arena, big stand, is a place of famous Estonian song festivals. The first song festival was in 1869, and it was choir singing, national folk choir singing, and but it was not only about culture, not only about singing, it was also the place where Estonians expressed their national feelings and decided to get the independence from Russian Empire, which conquered Estonia 200 years earlier, in early 1700s. Later on, the field of the songs became the place of the singing revolution. Gustav Ernesaks was a director of Estonian choir. He took the position in 1943, when Estonia was still occupied by the Nazis, and he was in a position throughout Soviet era and even after it. And if he would live few more months, he would celebrate 50 years the position of the director, the musical director of Estonian, of a famous Estonian choir. One of the festivals which took place in 1988 got a nickname of a singing revolution, because it was a very important cultural event during which Estonians, Latvians and Lithuanians decided to separate from Soviet Union, and decided to show the underground activities which started a little bit earlier, and to declare to the Soviet Union that they do not want to be part of the Soviet Union anymore. So the singing revolution is a very important historical, political and cultural event in Estonia. And all that took place here on the field of the songs. Continuing the story of independence, or on the contrary, the conquest of Estonia, we stopped in a very impressive newly built memorial. This memorial is just next to the Victory Memorial, which was erected by the Soviet authorities. Now, Estonia was twice conquered by Russia. First time by Russian Empire in 1709, and the second time by the Soviet Union in 1940, as a result of the secret pact of Molotov-Ribbentrop, during which Germany and Soviet Union decided on the spheres of their influence, and Soviet Union took over the Baltic States, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania. Russians, or let's call them communists, they started the regime of terror and terrible atrocities against the local population. More than 75,000 of Estonian people suffered during the Stalin repressions. They were deported to Siberia or other places in northeast Russia. They were killed by KGB agents for doing absolutely nothing, for not being guilty of any crimes or anything else. So the criteria were they were cleaning up the population from the undesired elements, sending to camps innocent people, and by that they actually created a huge tension which still exists in Estonia between Estonians and Russia today, or Russians of Estonia today. I walk on this impressive path in the tunnel between the two big black walls, and on both sides there are names of people who were victims of Stalin repressions. And I look at the lists of the names, and I see the date of birth and the date when the person was killed or died in the camps, and I see that the years are 41, 44, 48, 46, 51. Yeah, so the years after the Second World War mostly. So this is a period of terrible repressions, and actually it's a huge wound in Estonian history, and at the same time a big stain on the reputation of Russia, yeah, as being a country of terror, and Russian leaders, Stalin and other Russian leaders, also are known for atrocities against population, against nations they conquered in their history. So we are on a market in Tallinn, which is just next to the train station, which is just next to the old city. And there is a variety of all kinds of things. You can eat here, you can shop, you can buy necessary clothing, you can buy food. It's a really interesting place, quite a big and spacious place, and really I was impressed with it. From the old city of Tallinn, we took a short walk, about 2 kilometers, and found ourselves in the district of Kalanaja. First of all, on the way here, we saw a lot of nice wooden and modern houses, old and new, and it made a nicer and more detailed picture of how Tallinn looked 100 years ago and how does it look today. Now, in this neighborhood there is a huge seaplane museum, and also a lot of former warehouses were turned into modern facilities. For example, this former warehouse houses numerous restaurants and coffee shops, and you can eat in a very nice and fresh atmosphere. And another hangar like this houses today playground for children. Maybe some adults can play there as well. And here you can see a sea marine and the new modern apartment houses. So all this area, which 5 years ago was absolutely abandoned area of old Soviet built or even pre-Soviet built warehouses, today it became very modern and vogue and a welcoming facility with a lot of funny things to do.